I'm back. I know I took a bit of a hiatus, almost a month, but now I'm back to full KevCentral mode, and that means project bikes. 2 project bikes, 1 mod bike coming in quick succession along with a couple of e-bikes. But for today's video, it's not going to have any fancy editing, more raw footage. I want to talk about something I get a lot of questions about: how I go about making a project bike, what my decision making is as far as components, and in what order I approach them. Also, let me address one thing. First, I never tell anyone to upgrade bikes like I upgrade them. That's just what I do on the channel here. I try to get the most out of everything that I buy. And when that comes to big box bikes, I want to make them as good as they can possibly be. That said, I am not saying, nor have I ever said, that if you have, say, $1,000, that you should run down to Walmart and buy a $250 bike and then $750 worth of parts. If you do have enough, let me restate this. Buy the best bike you can afford to buy. That's what I say, and really the only thing that I've ever firmly said when it comes to bikes or upgrading or anything like that. If you can afford a $1,000 bike, get a $1,000 bike from your local bike shop. You'll have an awesome bike out of the box that you can take straight to a trail. If, however, you are in the majority of the population and you maybe already have a big box bike and you can't afford something better, but you may be able to afford a few parts as you go, and that's where my project bikes come in, because they are really what I do over time. I ride as I go. I ride a bike out of the box as much as I can ride it, and then I upgrade it with parts over time. And 2, let me state that, a $1,000 upgraded project bike is not really a $1,000 bike in the sense of, I didn't start out with $1,000. Started out with $225 and added 50 here, 75 there, maybe 150 there. If that totals up to $1,000, so be it. As long as I end up with a great bike, what does it matter? Especially if that fits my budget, upgrading over time. So, all that said, how do I go about approaching what parts I put on a bike? Well, it's really based on need. What do I need to put on the bike? Has something broken? Is something not performing the way that I want it to perform? If so, those are the parts I go after first. If, however, it still works and it's meeting the needs, but I want to up the game a little bit, maybe start taking it onto the trail, well, that's where I start looking at different parts. So let me get into that, but I'm not really going to do it here on this aluminum comp because there's a few parts already upgraded. Matter of fact, don't even look. Don't even look at that. I want you to see all that stuff. There are a few things already upgraded on this bike, so let me get a bone stock bike to kind of give you an idea of how I would approach from bone stock to upgrade. Here we go. This is more like it. Something like the Hyper Hydroform, bike. No longer available. Probably one of the best upgrade or project bikes that I've ever done. But there are things about this bike that make it an excellent example. Let's just say I wanted to upgrade this Hyper. Where would I start? And using my approach that I've already mentioned, upgrading what I need to upgrade first, well, what does this not do? Or what can this not do that I need it to? So first, I'm going to go for comfort items. I'm going to be riding this on the street, not on the trails out of the box because single wall wheels. Comfort items, meaning grips, bars, pedals, a saddle. In this case, the saddle is a snafu. I kind of like these. They're not the most comfortable, but they're not uncomfortable, and I love that snafu name. So, now these bars are very narrow, and I'll get to those in just a second, but on this particular bike, I'm not going to have it on the trail out of the box. Looking at comfort items, and the first thing that jumps out at me is these crappy pedals. These are horrible, horrible little metal and plastic pedals. Not only do they not last long, but those are super slippery. Those little metal ears. So my feet are going to be sliding off those. So I'm going to want to put some different pedals on it first. Next, I'm going to look at things like grips and see if maybe these are too hard and I want something softer. I like silicone foam or cork foam or really any quality grips. These are they're not too bad. They're grippy, but they're thin, so kind of beat your hands up over time on the trail. So I would look at those. Then I would look at the bars. Now about bars, let me get a couple of bars to show you what I'm talking about. This is a 720 millimeter handlebar. Now these factory bars that are on this hydroform and pretty common for big box bikes. As I mentioned, we're starting to see this change, but 620 millimeters here. So you can see the difference. There's a pretty good bit. I don't know how well this is coming out on camera, but there's a pretty good bit of width difference just going from 620 to 720. And that's assuming that you even have 620 to start out. Now, as I've mentioned, like on the new Schwinns and even the new Hypers, starting to see 720. So get this width out of the box. But 620 isn't even a guarantee. I've seen them as low as 585 on some big box bikes. Fine around town, but on the trail, that's going to present a problem. And let me try to give you an illustration of why. I'm trying this angle. I don't know how well you can see or hear me, but I have those 720 millimeter bars, and I'm going to choke up on them like they're 620s. And I want you to see, and you can mimic this, hold your arm straight out in front of you. Like you're kind of on narrower bars. You can measure it and duplicate this, but hold them out and you'll see everything's locked. And what that does is two things negatively on a trail. Number one, it takes more movement to get the same input as if I did less movement at a wider position. And that's because I'm locked. And going out, I don't know if you can see this, I'm locked. I move out, I automatically can't. There's kind of a bend here in my elbow, and that's absorption. That's less that rattles straight into your shoulder versus if you are straight on. So that's why I like wider bars, but that comes with a caveat. And that is wider to a point is good. Now this is personal preference, but I found 720 to 740 to be a good subtle change range. You go up to 720, you can go to 740, and those extra 20 millimeters are a subtle difference. You get over about 760, and that's a huge difference. Get to something crazy like this, which is 800. This is beyond my comfort zone, so I've settled onto 720, but only you can find that out. And you can find it out by just holding the bars out or holding your arms out with a dowel or a broom or something and finding out what's going to be comfortable width-wise for you. Again, for me, I like 720 to 740. But there's nothing wrong if you prefer 800, whatever works. It's all personal preference, and also it's not just the bars. The stem comes into play. Stem length. Stem length works in conjunction with bar width to put the bars at a specific position, and factory stems are usually pretty long. This one's a shorter one. I think this is about 80 millimeter. A lot of big box bikes have these honkin' 90 millimeter stems. Very awkward, very long. Now they're starting to move it down. I think the new Schwinns have, 70 millimeters. Again, this one I think is an 80. But you can get them down pretty low, and for me, I like something in the 45 to 50 range. This is a 50. And you can get kind of a rough idea of how it's going to fit together by measuring, and you measure from the center of the stem to the center of where the bar would be. That'll get your length, and you can kind of play around with that. Find that in conjunction to bar width. One last note on fitment up at the bars. Like I mentioned, going from 720 to 740 to 760, subtle, but going over 760, that magnifies. The effect magnifies quickly. So 760 to 780, very noticeable effect for me. The same holds true for stems, but in reverse. Going from 90 to 80, very subtle. Down to 70, a little more noticeable. Anything 60 and below, those are massive changes quick. So going from 60 to 50, down to 40, big changes that stack up really fast. And that's the cheap and easy part of my project bike upgrades. Next comes more money and more thought going into what I'm buying. Now I'm looking at the fork, which is usually the next thing I go for. After I do bars and pedals and such, I'll go for the fork. Now in the case of this bike, it would be a little unique because these are single wall wheels. And that means I would need to buy wheels along with the fork, or wheels even before a fork upgrade, because single wall, not very tough, not enough to make it out on a mountain bike trail, where even the cheap double wall wheels that come on most big box bikes, they're good enough that I'll usually get a fork and then a wheel set. But in a fork, sometimes I want an air fork, but it's whatever the budget dictates, as you'll see in the Aluminum Comp V2 video. But anything, pretty much, is going to be an improvement over these big box forks. And some big box forks, like the ones on the Schwinns, are improving, but they're still not very good on the trail for anything more than the lightest and simplest of very hard packed and very smooth trails. So a fork is my next choice, then wheels. And not just because I want better wheels, but also because I need them for the drivetrain. Because almost every big box bike is going to come with a freewheel. And if you don't know what a freewheel is, I have other videos, but let me grab a freewheel wheel set and I'll kind of give you a quick rundown. Aftermarket wheel sets are not only going to be stronger than these factory wheels, especially these single walls, but even the double walls that come on just about every big box bike, but also this one is an outlier. This has a quick release on the rear wheel, which was one of the things that made this Hydroform such a good deal. Sure wish they would bring this back. But most big box wheels have a bolt-on wheel set like this. This is off of, this is the aluminum comp. This is the factory aluminum comp wheel set. See the 27.5 right there. And you can see, get my tool out of the way here, that this is a single stack of gears that threads on to the hub because this is a freewheel. And they're not only less strong at the axle, but also, like I've mentioned, more likely to be bolt-on wheels, which you don't want with a modern wheel set, but also the cassette, which is a stack of gears that slides on. And there's a top nut, holds it in place. All modern drivetrains are going to use a cassette. So with a modern wheel set, I get the cassette. And that's another reason that the wheel set, very important when I get to the drivetrain. And if you watch this channel, you know I love 1x drivetrains. This is a 3x, meaning it has 3 separate gears. They're on top. 3 separate gears that are shifted with this front derailleur. I can get rid of all that with the 1x. So not only is it less weight, less complexity, so it's simple. It's easier to work with, and it's easier to adjust because there is no adjustment. There's a single gear up here. And if you watch this channel, you'll know that lately I've almost exclusively been using these IXF crank sets, a single chain ring, so less complexity, and I've shed all that weight, and also super affordable. And they come in usually a couple of colors that are easy to access, black and red, but there are multiple other colors, like you'll see a special one coming up soon. But that's my drivetrain. And among the last things that I look at when I'm upgrading a bike, because by the time I get to the point of the drivetrain itself, then I'm practically almost done. And before I get to the final thing that I upgrade, or my final step in my process for making a project bike, I do want to mention this is a full suspension, and the reason I'm not covering that on this bike, you know, this was one of only 2. The Hydroform, well, that doesn't say Hydroform, it just says Hyper, but the Hydroform, only one of 2 full suspension big box bikes that I would consider worthy of project bike status. And now this one's gone, unfortunately. That leaves only the Mongoose XR Pro, which I haven't seen in stock for a while now on the Walmart website, so I don't know what's going on with that. But because of that, there's not really any modern full suspension big box bikes that I think, and I'm not saying there's not any I wouldn't put parts on, but there's nothing I would try to make an actual mountain bike or trail worthy mountain bike that's full suspension currently on the market. Now hopefully something will come up soon, but for now that's why I'm going to be skipping this and get to my final component, and the last thing that I usually get to when I'm doing a project bike. Now I didn't mention the shifter because this isn't all, and on many big box bikes that I upgrade they have this dual unit, these Shimano Easy Fires or some variant thereof. I lose this. I'll only have one shifter, won't have anything on the other side because I go with the 1x drivetrain. But I'm also losing the brake lever, but it doesn't matter because my final upgrade is going to be hydraulic brakes. That's not to say I'm not beyond using mechanical disc brakes, because if they work, that's fine, but these JAK Super brakes and some of these cheaper ones might not work that well out of the box. That would make hydraulic a must, but that would come together with all the other parts. And there you have it. My process for making a project bike, turning a humble big box bike into a worthy trail rider for the average person. And I stress average person, because odds are that your needs are probably more in line with mine. Just the average person out trying to have some fun on a mountain bike trail, and not someone taking 10-foot drops or fancy jumps, in which case those multi-$1,000 bikes are a requirement. But for me, my project bikes work out just fine. I ride on the local trails quite a bit, and so have many other local riders and friends on the project bikes without any major catastrophes or no major parts failures. And I'm pretty confident, and I know from experience, that my project bikes will outperform any of the entry-level bikes at the local bike shop. And the fact that I'm able to ride my big box bike on the local streets and have fun all the while saving up money for the usual 6-month process that it takes to get to the end stage of a project bike, that's a win. And now some bonus footage, starting out with the conversation about this hydroform. Now I get asked regularly, a daily basis, if I will sell this extra hydroform. Well, I don't sell any of my bikes and box them up and ship them off. I just don't get into that game. But I bought this on a whim and ended up getting it right before they totally went away. I already have my fully upgraded Project Hydro, so I think I'm going to give this away. And I'm going to do it to one of my patrons, and I'm probably going to make this a 6-month process because I may or may not put a few nice parts on this. So, and I'm not soliciting for everyone to jump on and be a patron for a bike giveaway, because that's not what being a patron for KevCentral is about. Simply a place for people that want a little bit of extra behind the scenes content. And honestly, I don't do that much extra content on my Patreon, but the people can support the channel, get a direct line of communication with me so people can ask me questions. It's easier for me to answer them there because it doesn't get diluted into all the comments and messages from my website or from YouTube. So, patrons, look forward to something about this bike coming up soon. I think I'll probably make it maybe an end of the year thing so that somebody gets a new Hyper Hydroform going into the new year. So we'll see about that, but that's what's going to happen with this Hydroform. And next, in my latest bike check video, I got asked quite a bit why I got rid of the Mad Max Stranger Things Mongoose. Well, I actually didn't. It was just up in my loft and I forgot about it. So there it is, and that's not where it's going to stay, but I'm not getting rid of it. You can see I still have the Stranger Things radio on it. It's going to be a display bike right up here over my entryway door on the wall once I get the walls finished out. But yeah, not getting rid of my Stranger Things Mad Max. I also want to address a hidden expense in making a project bike or even upgrading a bike, not even a big box, any bike. And that's tools, because other than basic stuff, which only require basic tools, there are specialty tools. Like removing the bottom bracket, even to get to that, there's a specialty tool. I've talked about when I made this toolbox. I have a video on that on my Kev Reviews channel. I'll link it down in the description. You can check that out if you haven't seen it already. I've even added tools and some I left out, like my Gates Carbon Drive tension adjuster that I never needed. Spent $100 and something bucks on this thing, but there are a lot of tools that I use, as I just mentioned, on a daily or weekly basis when I'm working on or upgrading bikes. And tools also gets to something special, and that's a gripe that I have. And that's with Schwinn. As much as I love Schwinn, I don't know what they are doing with bottom brackets. But to get this one off, let me pan this camera up a bit. You may have noticed in an earlier shot that there's a tool hanging from my saddle rail here on the 2020 aluminum comp. That's my bottom bracket removal tool, as well as the drive side cup for the bottom bracket. And the reason that those are there, and this goes in with the hidden cost sometimes of some of this stuff, or with any bike, there's a specialty tool for getting the bottom bracket out. I couldn't get this out. I had to take this to the local bike shop, and not only just this 2020 aluminum comp, that goes back to the 2019 aluminum comp, had the exact same problem. And I guess this is my only gripe with Schwinn is that I don't know why or how they get these that tight. This is a steel cup threading into aluminum. I have no idea how they got it so tight, and I'll try to cut here to some old footage, some footage fairly recently where I did this. I tried, my dad has a rigid impact driver that's rated at 1,740 inch-pounds, which I converted over, and it said that was 144 foot-pounds, 144, 45, I forget which number. I couldn't get this off with that. Now, that's rated at that for, usually those ratings are loosening. Well, on these bottom bracket cups, to loosen, you actually go clockwise here on the drive side. So that's normally halved. But even half of that is still well above the rating. I looked it up. The tightest bottom bracket that I could find out of all the bottom brackets that I know of that have ever existed, there may be one or two others, but all the ones that I know of, the tightest one was 610 inch-pounds. That's like 50 foot-pounds. So why, with over, let's see, what's that, 100 and, well, that's what, 80, a little less than 80 foot-pounds of removal torque, I couldn't get this out. And then I upped the game. I have this. An air impact, matter of fact, looks good from this side. This poor thing. My basement got infested with chipmunks about 2 or 3 years ago. They even chewed through my security camera wires. They're so cute, but man, they're mean. Chewed away this rubber. But this thing is rated at 250 foot-pounds. But since I'm going clockwise, that means that it's going to be 125 foot-pounds going this way, at least for this. Now, not all tools rate. Some have a reverse that rates higher. So to get this off, I had to take it to my local bike shop with my tool. They charged me to use my tool. So just a point, it's their labor, so they've got to charge for stuff, right? But they charged me to use my tool on their impact driver, and I'll see if I can cut in a picture here. They have a Cobalt impact driver that's rated at 650 foot-pounds. Now that's loosening torque, so it could be half of that, but some of those don't half. Like I said, some of them are full torque both directions. But at least, it took at least their thing with 325 pounds of foot torque to get this off. And that leaves me at a dilemma, because I've already tried one of the other new Schwinns and I can't get it off. So, I try it manually and I just can't do it. Arguably, my personal foot-pounds of torque that I can apply to something, maybe about 2. I don't know. They slip off. You can't get a whole lot, but I can normally get off a bottom bracket, but I can't on these new Schwinns. So that's a dilemma for me, because do I want to go buy that Cobalt? And they have another new Cobalt that's even more powerful than that one, 1,200 foot-pounds. Do I want to buy that just to get a mysteriously highly torqued steel into aluminum threads? I want to stress that. I don't know how they're getting them this tight. But do I want to do that and then have another battery for something? Because, I'm a Craftsman guy. I have Craftsman toolbox, Craftsman tools, even Craftsman knives that I open some boxes with. I'm a Craftsman guy. So I went to Lowe's and I picked this up. This has for 275 max foot-pounds of torque, and I looked it up. This is supposed to be 275 in both directions. And this works with my Craftsman batteries, which I think I have one over here. Yeah, here. This V20 battery still has 2 bars. This is my 2 amp hour. They make a 4. Now they have a 6 and a 9 amp hour. But these work in this, my Craftsman blower, my soon-to-be acquired Craftsman string trimmer. They call it a weed whacker. And even a chainsaw that I'm looking at. Quite a few things use this battery. And I like to have one battery type, and we're not having to constantly hunt. But that's something, and I'm saying all this because it's something to factor into everything. Unless you want to take it down to a bike shop, you're going to need sometimes specialty tools, even non-bike specialty tools, to get off some basic stuff sometimes. So just an FYI on that, and why I'm bringing all this up, because a subtle little rant. How you get over 150 foot-pounds of torque on steel going into aluminum, I have no idea. But it required me to buy this, which was, I think this was $169. And this was without the battery. This is one without the battery, is $169. That Cobalt that they used is, I want to say that was $229, and then the newer version of that is $269. So, cost, have to factor it in. Well, I say that, but such is the love of cycling and getting addicted to upgrading. They may have charged me to use my own tool, and I'm kidding with that. They actually did me a favor by getting me in quick to get that done, but at least they gave me this reusable zip tie. So I've got that. Put my tool back in my toolbox so I don't lose it again. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate each and every one of you. If you're new here, I hope you subscribe and that everyone has that notification bell active so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos, because there are about to be a lot of them now that Dad's fully back to health. I think better than me. And also comment below if you would like to see me struggle with one of these bottom brackets on the other Schwinns as I use my new tool, my new Craftsman here. Comment below and let me know if you'd like to see a video on that, or if that's too boring for you. I don't know how some of that stuff goes, because a lot of people don't seem to like the how-to videos. They don't get a lot of views, so comment below with that. Again, thanks for watching and have a great day.